11 games to go. I'm just trying to think where the wins are going to come from. And I hate to say that. I want to back these boys. We want to support them. But where can you see these wins coming? Obviously, we've got the FA Cup, a nice little break, which could be a good sort of switch up. And then we've got Crystal Palace away, the Nottingham Forest at home, obviously in the Premier League. Can we get points from those? But then we've got to rely on Wolves dropping points, and you don't want that when you're going into the run-in. You don't want to rely on teams dropping points, and they're already 5 points, pretty much 6 points because of the goal difference. So, yeah, we just got to go into every game praying if you're into that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. AJ, I hesitate to say this, but I wonder if the uncomfortable truth when we look back at the end of the season is as much as Ipswich Town gave it their best shot. They've largely competed. We've seen some really good games, but I just wonder if maybe at the end of the season we'll just look back and say, look, all things being equal, they just weren't good enough. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but obviously it's a huge step up. And a lot of these players are playing in the Premier League for the first time, the best league in the world. And for me, it always just feels like they're just lacking something. Do you know what I mean? At the very highest level, that means they can't get these results.
Yeah, and I think at this point, in a way, I've kind of come to terms with that. And when you do, maybe it's because I'm not a natural Ipswich fan. Obviously, I have all the connections with this, and I want to see this team doing as well as absolutely possible because it's what's best for everyone. But when you kind of step back from it all and realise what they've had to do in the last 18 months, and that counts as the recruitment, that counts as the step up in players that have had to jump up from League One, many of them into the Premier League, and the staff as well. Other teams have done it where they've come up into the Premier League and they've been able to survive and kick on. And other teams have done back-to-back promotions where they've been able to survive. But this is a very different Premier League. And we saw this last year where I'd say a good team was probably relegated in Luton with the way that they approached that. I think in other seasons, Luton would have stayed up. In other seasons, I think Ipswich should have had a really good hand at staying up. And it makes you realise how big the gap is. And that probably, and I don't want it to come as too kind of conclusive. There's no guarantee that Ipswich are going to be relegated, but look at the teams that they would probably at this stage be coming down with. Leicester in disarray, Southampton, there's so much negativity, and it kind of points you towards a more positive place for me. I feel so confident going ahead with this football club where it feels like when you get on the ladder and kind of the Premier League Championship thing and you're in that kind of parachute payment thing, which you've seen with other clubs, and you look at the teams coming up from the Championship, Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United probably put Ipswich into that position, and the fact that they are much more stable than a lot of teams who bounce between the two. I just feel really positive overall. It's been an amazing journey so far. I think people have to make the most of what's coming ahead. 11 big games, fun games, a couple of really good trips, Chelsea, Newcastle, things like that. There's no reason why they can't stay up. It'll be really difficult, of course, with the fact that Wolves know how to win, and Ipswich seemingly at the moment are struggling with that. But I think there is kind of a sense of coming to terms with things, and that will take longer for some people, of course, naturally, because there is such a desire and clamour to stay in this league and not to drop back down and be back to some of those games and some of those experiences. But I think the bigger picture when it arrives will be that this club is in a really fantastic place. So that's the main thing. And yeah, there are disappointing factors. I think we all expected Ipswich to improve as the season went on, and it feels like possibly they've regressed a little bit. Like the last 6 weeks, I think, have been pretty disappointing in terms of how they've approached things. And they're not a club that are above criticism as well. That's understandable. We have to be able to sit here and say, they've done this wrong. This needed to be better. This part of the recruitment wasn't good enough. These players haven't stepped up, etc., etc., etc. It's not above that, but there also has to be an equal amount of balance and acceptance of how hard this has been. You can't lean to one way or the other, as we've seen maybe some of the national outlets do in the last week or so. You can't overly criticise a club that have had to make the step up Ipswich have, and you can't also ignore the shortcomings of what the season's been so far. But we can't delve too deep into that, probably with 11 games to go, with 33 points on a piece still to play for. But the main thing, I think, is just enjoying it and supporting these guys who are having to make one hell of a step up into incredibly competitive games, and enjoying the journey of it all.
Well said, sir.